Hi, and welcome to week 4 of our course. And this week's topic is on ontology, epistemology, and methodology, and really the philosophical underlayings of the research that we do. I think it's good that we started by looking at what is research in LIS because it's good to kind of put research in a practical light first, and then go into kind of more of the abstract concepts as we go along, because then we kind of have a vision in our minds of what it is that we're looking at and what it is that we are trying to accomplish in research. So I like where this is in week 3, and this is also fairly heavy reading too, and so it's kind of good to not start off the beginning of September with it, but have it branch off after a couple of weeks of getting your feet wet, so to speak. This week's initial post is due the morning of September 23rd. We'll keep that in mind. And the readings there's not too many of them, but they are fairly dense. So you have 4 readings to look at. In my mind, I think the most useful reading will be the Crotty reading. And Michael Crotty, this chapter is an ebook. Obviously, you've got the PDF, but it's from a book called The Foundations of Social Research. If you have interest in understanding the different epistemological standpoints and theoretical concepts that chapter talks about, I would have a look at different chapters in Crotty's book. It's one perspective or one way of looking at the philosophies surrounding research. And if there's one thing that I've learned by studying this as a grad student myself, it's that there are varying definitions and concepts of different terms that you'll come across. If you find yourself a little bit confused by the concepts, you are not alone. And it's not hard to be confused just because there are these varying ways of looking at it. Crotty looks at things like constructionism as an epistemology, but then you'll see constructionism referred to as basically as a methodology or I guess a theoretical framework in later works by different scientists, researchers. And constructionism is also, I view it as synonymous with constructivism in the way that Crotty's using it, whereas if you read about constructionism later, it is a little bit of a separate term, a branch, if you will, of constructivism. So that I use that example just to illustrate that the terms can get confusing, and that's okay. I hope by this video, and I believe that there will be a couple of videos that I'm going to have to extend this to, 2 short videos. This is just an introduction to my perspectives of some of these terms and research it and tying it into the practicalities of doing research as well. So I hope it just scaffolds on to what you discover in the readings and what you discover in any other readings that you might find. And I have a short PowerPoint, but the PowerPoint, I'm not posting it. It really is just a visual to guide you along on this little video that we're doing. And you'll always have access to it through the video if you want to explore the links that I provided on it. So I'll just pull this up here. Just talk to you about ontology and epistemology, and I would say find a definition that works for you. This particular website, It's Not You, It's Your Data.com, gives some what I think are very nice definitions of ontology and epistemology, with ontology being defined as the nature of reality, our assumptions about reality, and what we define as the truth. And then epistemology is what is our belief about how that truth can be discovered. And then methodology is more the approach that we use in order to make that discovery happen. All research doesn't begin with methodology, or at least it shouldn't. Methodology comes or stems from how we view what we hope to discover and what we believe to be a valid way to discover that? What do we believe is truthful and valid and a legitimate way to find out the answer to our research question? So the first place research should always start is with curiosity of the researcher, with a well-defined research question and a problem, if you will, or something that we hope to find a solution for. That is how all research should begin. And then where we go from there depends on what that problem is and how we both best hope to discover or provide an answer, provide a solution to that problem to be solved. At the end of the day, all researchers would like their research to be valid and where people will trust the results. That's why we don't just start with methodology. We don't just say, I'm going to put out a survey and do this. You want to start with what it is you hope to discover. Consider your epistemological standpoint about how you believe that that discovery can happen, and then you pick your methodology based on that. It is a fairly hierarchical chain that needs to occur. The one thing that I'll say is in research articles, you will rarely see that outlined. You'll rarely see some researcher say, this is my ontological standpoint, and here's the epistemology that follows it, and here's my methodology as a result. Often when it comes to how has this research been studied or been done, they have a methodology section, and it just launches into the methodology. And it's really up to the reader to make the connection between what their research problem is defined as and the methodology that they've used. I think if you get a sense that there is a gap in there, or there's just something that just isn't sitting quite right with you, with the results that they discover, go back to the beginning of the methodology that they chose and the way that they framed the question, and see if you agree that that approach that they took was the best way to answer the question that they posed. The other thing that you'll find is a lot of researchers stick to the same type of methodologies. So if you are a researcher that is a grounded theorist, probably most of your research is going to be approached by that. And which is okay, as long as their philosophical background into how they believe truth exists and how they believe that that truth can be discovered is constant. Then grounded theory might work as the best methodological approach. So it does follow, but you will find that researchers, it seems like they tend to are drawn towards a particular methodology, and it kind of appears like that's a starting point for them for the research, but it shouldn't be. The impetus for the research has to be the curiosity, the sense of wanting to discover, and then what you believe, how you believe that discovery should happen. And don't consider philosophical positions, philosophical positions meaning that you you're sort of an objectivism point of view, where you believe that all reality is objective, it can be discovered, there is a truth to things, there is a true and a false. Don't think that if you have that philosophical approach, that automatically puts you in the category as a quantitative researcher. Qualitative and quantitative research, the discovery of through numbers, the discovery, something that can be counted versus something that can be given meaning, or discovered, I guess, or described is a better way to say it, can exist regardless of your epistemological position, regardless of your ontological position. It's whatever makes the most sense. I can be a constructivist, so I can believe that meaning is constructed by the things that people say, and that constitutes reality. That's my ontological position, is that that constitutes reality. But I can use a quantitative data approach to discover that. But what cannot be at odds, and this is from Crotty that says this, what cannot be at odds is the epistemological viewpoints. So I cannot be both an objectivist and a constructionist, as he calls it. So I can't say in one breath that there is objective meaning, and then in the next breath say that everything is a matter of interpretation. I have to choose that first and foremost, and then when that is clear and where I'm going to pay attention, I'm going to pay attention to that first, and then I'm going to choose my methodological approach after that. All right, so find a definition that works well for you. Crotty outlines these main epistemological positions. Now, he blends it in with theoretical perspectives, and that's a place where it gets a little bit muddy in the waters in my mind of how we view things, but I think it's I kind of see them as subsets of the epistemological points that he mentions, which are objectivism, constructionism, and subjectivism. How can reality be constructed? With what is our approach to discovering that reality? And positivism, of course, that kind of is historically the start of the building and the foundations of research, where positivists believe that there is one truth that is to be sought and is to be found. Whereas constructionism, as Crotty calls it, which I will call constructivism, is the belief that multiple realities exist, that reality is a construction of the human condition. And then all the terms sort of tend to blend together after that. So it really is quite a matter of different approaches to looking at data and looking at how we approach finding out information. And I think the most important thing to understand is that all research is and should be approached by one of these methods or one of these philosophies, let's say. Let's not confuse our terms. But it all stems from that ontological position of how we believe truth exists and where we believe it exists. I'm going to try to explain this now as best I can in the next 2.5 minutes. One of the best visuals that I found for describing the relationship and the flow of research is called the research onion. And if I can just bounce over to this one, this is what the research onion looks like. And it kind of, well, that's not going to work. And it kind of goes from broad to the narrow. So if you look at the outside of the onion, we've got our ontological position of positivism, realism, interpretivism, pragmatism. And we can start with sort of that frame of mind and then work our way inwards to our methodologies, which are under the onion of experiment, survey, case study, action, research, etc. We can consider different approaches, multi-methods, mixed methods, or mono-method. That's where just one method is used. Multi-methods would be something like when I did my dissertation. This isn't true. When I did my dissertation, I did interviews. I did pretty much one method. But I could have done observation. So by doing interviews and observation, I'm using 2 qualitative methods. Mixed methods is when you're mixing both quantitative and qualitative. So in the research study that I'm involved in right now, we did a survey, which is fairly quantitative because it can be counted or measured, but we also are doing follow-up interviews, which is something that is a little bit more of a description of the research that we found. And then cross-sectional and longitudinal, so across different sections of perhaps a population, and longitudinal is the length of time. And then we get to data collection, how we're going to actually collect the data. So I like this onion approach, and if you would like to have it explained better, there is an interactive, if you just Google search interactive onion or go to onion.derby.ac.uk, you can click on each of those concepts and it will bring up a definition for you. I'll leave this video at this, and then I'll continue in the next video with a little bit more about Crotty and all of these concepts. Thanks.